I'm going to turn this off. I was watching something pretty interesting. It's a young girl from a strong Episcopalian background, and I believe she lived in a village in Mexico. It could be Guatemala. I'm not sure. I missed that part of where she said exactly that she was from. And she is talking about how she was visited by, she calls him the Lord, the Holy Spirit, and it was really engaging and interesting to me. I personally, good morning, Jolene. It's funny, there's a lot of things that I don't talk about my experience because I have to remain accessible. I have to remain on this level so people can come in and not feel overwhelmed by what they're getting, so they can ease their own way into their own relationship with that infinite consciousness, that creation consciousness. And I know for myself, I kind of get a little, I get overwhelmed when I bring that consciousness all the way in. And so it's interesting hearing somebody so freely and openly talking about it, which I know is what needs to happen. So anyway, I was just listening to that, and that just opened some things up for me. So good morning. Welcome to Morning Oasis. It is the 1st of June. Okay, you guys, we're 6 months into this year. Where did the time go? Where did the whole beginning of 2017 go? Oh my gosh, it's mind-blowing how fast time is just flowing right now. One of my friends, Kyle, my friend who's the producer and helps me make all of the awesome recorded stuff that I'm doing now, he messaged me yesterday and he asked me, have you noticed that the time has shifted and changed? So I'm curious. I noticed that, and I had noticed it just the morning before, or the afternoon before, because I had a friend and her daughter over, and I said, "Oh, look, it's 1:11," and she was like, "No, it's past that. Actually, it's like a few minutes past that," and I was like, "What? What?" And the time on the phones was sped up. So I'm curious, have you guys noticed there's a sudden discrepancy between the time on your phones or your computers and the time on things that are not connected to the internet? Things like your oven clock, your microwave clock, maybe your clock on your coffee maker, or if you have an old school alarm clock. Just check it out. I'm curious to see how widespread that is. I think that we did have a time shift occur, and I've then this morning. Good morning, Shauna. Shauna was telling me how yesterday, was it yesterday? She also had a time shifting occur as a result of being in connection with another, who I won't out unless they choose to. Oh, by the way, you guys. No card pulls yet selected for today. So anybody who would like a card pulled today, go ahead and make a request and I would be glad to. I have 3 slots open. So I'm curious, how many of you guys have noticed a difference in your time from your via your clock versus your phone? It's interesting. It's what I'm seeing is it's between 1.5 to 2.5 minutes for most people. You've noticed it too, divine time versus linear time. Oh, for sure. That's a great way to put it, Karen. Great way to put it. Okay, Karen, I would love to pull for you, Shauna. So you guys, I have to say, okay, great, Karen and Jolene. There we go. Look at that. You ladies are on it. Shauna, Jolene, and Karen. So my beloved round new cards have gone missing. They're like gone. I can't find them anywhere. I took them on a journey with me and a friend when we went to the gorge. And I know it didn't get left anywhere because she was pulling them out and reading from them the whole time we were driving. And I can't find them anywhere. And she remembers leaving them in the car. I remember seeing them in the car. And now they are nowhere. They're not in the car. They're not anywhere. And the funny thing is, she was also just over, was it yesterday, day before yesterday, and she had said that she had left her coffee mug here. And she remembers walking out of the house with it. Good morning, Chris. She remembers walking out of the house with it. She remembers carrying it all the way. Nope, she already checked all of her bags and all around her home too. So she remembers that and couldn't find it anywhere. It just suddenly wasn't with her. And so when she came back here, it was up in Svas's bathroom. Isn't that crazy? So she said, if they're not in Svas's bathroom, they must still be in the ether. And what it reminds me of is a few years back, I got a deck of cards that are dragon cards. And I was very drawn to these cards. You know, I get drawn to things, and they don't always necessarily end up being my things. You know, most of the time they're not mine. I tend to be a conduit to get things to where they're supposed to go. And these dragon cards were an example of that. And so my friend Josh, I kept feeling like, oh, Josh, you're going to love these cards. The cards are, first of all, they were all dragon oriented. And they took, each suit was set in a different culture. So there was the Aztec. We checked all the bags. So the culture was set, the cultures were Aztec, Egyptian, ancient Chinese, and Greek. And all the women in the cards were naked. Like, all the men were dressed in these ceremonial robes and everything, but the women were all naked. So I was like, Josh, you're going to love these cards. And so when I got them, he looked through them, and we were going to do a reading for him. He looked through them. He's like, these are great. And then and he set them down on my desk, and then we went and, made dinner or something. And then we came back to get the cards to do a reading, and they were gone. They were gone for 6 months. And then I found them behind my desk, and I look back there. I actually, clean out behind my desk quite regularly. It's not like something I do once every 6 months. It's much more regular than that. So I was back there, and there they were. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I said, Josh, I think these are supposed to be your cards, and I don't think I'm the one that's supposed to be doing readings. And so he took them home with him. And so this has happened before. And I just really hope that those are supposed to be my cards, because I love them. Okay, I'll stop whining. I'll stop whining and I'll do readings. Okay. Wow, I just sounded just like my mother when I did that. All right, let's see. Shauna requested a card pull first. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to have to pull 2 cards for you, Shauna, because they both the messenger and the goddess cards are like, no, yeah, both of us. Yeah, both. So we'll start with the goddess. You asked the fae. For a while, I have a strong connection with the fae. And for a while, we were having all sorts of things going missing in the house. And it got to the point where it was ridiculous. I'm like, okay, we were having things like steaks go missing from the freezer and ice cream tubs show up. And so it's like, what is going on? And all of our dishes were going missing, and it was interesting. And so my son ended up taking advantage of this strong fae activity that was coming in, and was using it to his advantage to not have to bring his dishes down and to take money from our purses. This was his learning experience about all of that. I don't think it was the fae who've taken the cards. I'm not getting a strong pull for that. Oh, interesting. We haven't seen her. She hasn't shown up in this yet. So let me pull the other card too, because we want to do both of them. read them together. I love doing these. This is what I love about doing the card pulls in the Morning Oasis, is because in a lot of ways it helps me organize what I'm going to talk about. Oftentimes it's, I have kind of a subtle idea, I write down a sentence of what I think we'll be talking about, but the cards really help me organize it, so it's awesome. And I get to play with the cards in ways that I don't normally, especially if I'm just doing a reading. Sorry. I've been having, I know there's some things going on in my life right now that I'm not really talking too much about, and they're starting to show up in my throat. Very interesting. This is another one that we haven't seen in the decks on the Morning O. 27. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to show you the two cards that we got, and you'll see why I'm going, So you got Athena, Initiative, and Make the Sacrifice. These are the two cards that came through. And I'll go ahead and start reading for them. Let's see. I'm getting read Athena first. Athena, Initiative. Beautiful Greek warrior goddess Athena is the supreme goddess for initiative. She worked alongside many gods, finding clever ways to maintain justice. Athena chose not to have a male consort and was a fearless leader in many battles. She is slow to anger, but will not back down if negotiation fails. She invented sport for people to express their competitiveness, prowess, and athleticism. Athena comes forth to reinforce the importance of having the courage and integrity to stand up and defend what you truly believe is right and just. She cautions you to avoid petty squabbles, but instead determine which battles are worth fighting. The snake, cunning and wisdom; owl, wisdom and knowledge; the spider, universal weaver, are often associated with Athena. And make the sacrifice. You will not achieve the outcome you desire if you're unwilling to act upon your intentions. It is not as simple as wanting something to happen or believing that it will happen. You have to make it happen, and to make it happen requires that you be willing and ready to do whatever is necessary, no matter the sacrifice. Everything you desire, you must give of yourself in return. Yeah. Oh, good morning, Kristen. So I think that this is coming up. Shauna is in the middle of really stepping forward and stepping out and being seen, coming forward and ready to start being seen, creating her own things. She's been in the background supporting and helping me for the last year, and really as a friend and companion in learning and growth, she's been supporting me for the last 4 years. So seeing her come forward has been amazing, and I absolutely love it. And so I think this is time, this make the sacrifice is really saying, Shauna, it's time to, carve off those parts that are saying, no, I can't show up. And we were actually talking about this morning, about how your mirror has shown up, so you can really see yourself and see, oh, these are the ways that I inhibit myself. Oh my God, I'm getting the burps now, Shauna. This is the way that I inhibit myself from coming forward, from showing up, from being present, and taking the initiative. So I know you have a lot of little projects and ideas and things that you're thinking about doing and ways that you can show up. It's time to just start doing it. Step forward, and anything that you find, you got to show that you're worried about the sacrifices of. Cut those things away and let them carve that away. Athena is there to support you. I also find it interesting, Athena never took a spouse, and Shauna has been single for a while. And she kind of has like a, I don't need anybody feel about her, in her energy and in her consciousness. So I think Athena is part of that. She's there supporting that. And she's like, no, you need to make you. Go forward, make you, so. And she created, Athena is considered to be the one who created the Olympics, right? So Shauna's working on building our, not that we're coming together in our HB fair for competition, but coming together to be able to show ourselves, show our abilities, show what we do, show who we are and how we can serve. So I think she's supporting you in that as well. Right? Yeah, exactly. You would love to have somebody, but you don't need them. And I think that's beautiful. Okay, so who's next? Jolene. Let's see. It's funny, Jolene. I actually have a good friend who also watches Jolene Wilson. And so whenever I say your name, it reminds me of her, and I want to call you JoJo because that's what we used to call her. Jolene. Oh. Interesting. Oh, okay. The Shadowscapes wanted to talk to you. It's funny. They're like the last ones that I go to for this. You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's see. So I'm curious if anybody has been finding in their lives a more resolution to some conflict, since we've been talking about it all week long. How we do conflict, how do we handle it? How many of you are starting to notice a shifting in the way you approach or view conflict? How many of you have been having small conflicts come up in order to practice or try things out? Your grandmother called you JoJo too. Maybe that's where I'm feeling it as well. Okay. We got this card not that long ago, actually. This is the Seven of Cups. So in the Seven of Cups, the card really represents the idea of these goals that are, well, there's a part, let me just feel for a second, because this card could really go one of two ways. Let me just feel it for a minute. Okay, so sometimes we read this card as, let me get it so you can see it. She is looking up here at this castle on an island in the sky, and she's like, that is where I want to go. And the guy with her, he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't see that one on the map. I can get us here, but I don't see that on the map. I don't know how to get us there. And how are we going to get all this stuff up there? You know, we've got all these things with us. And she's like, I don't care about any of that. I just want to go there. So sometimes this card comes up as a reminder of what it is to make goals that are unattainable or unachievable and bringing it down to earth. However, when I'm feeling strongly with you, the other way of reading this card is it's time to let go of these earthly ideas and desires and like these other locations that normal people could reach, because you're not here to do that. You're actually here to direct people to this other place. Open yourself up into this other way of traveling and going somewhere. So bringing your wisdom, your awareness, you're the one who can see that place. He can't even see it, right? He can't even find it. You can. So it's time for you to bring those things that you see, that you do, that you're aware of, down, so all of us can find and see them. It's bringing it into the whole and bringing it into the collective is really important right now. This also kind of ties into what Shauna's cards were. And Karen. Oh. The Messenger Oracle want to also talk with you, Karen. I'm going to put away a few of these cards really quickly. Okay. Let's see. And we're already good and shuffled. We'll just give them a quick little shuffle. Good, Jolene. Good. Thanks for the confirmation. And that sounds like confirmation for you. Ah, yes. So this really kind of wraps up all of those cards perfectly. And I'll read what they have to say first, and then I'll give my 2 cents on it. It's funny. When you're working on writing your own oracle deck, which I've been doing for the last few weeks, it definitely makes you appreciate what other people have written and like, oh, okay, I see why you put it that way. I really appreciate the effort that it took for you to make that concise. And then when there's really long things, it's like, oh, man, could you have made that a little more concise? So the card that you pulled was Time to Ground, number 45 from the Messenger Oracle deck. By the way, this is Raven Felon's deck. We all experience moments in our lives when we feel confused, unfocused, and surrounded by chaos and turmoil. These moments are often unavoidable and are the lessons that these moments can impart, but in how you respond to them is a choice only you can make. Take a deep breath and a moment to pause and reconnect with Gaia and nature. Seek the silence of the void within, whilst your spirit spirals downward to anchor itself like an ancient tree root in the cleansing embrace of the earth beneath you. So we are definitely in this time right now where it's so important to remember to ground. The reason is, imagine, one of the things I love about this card is that there's this turtle inside of the tree, as well as she is in the tree. And her eye, her third eye, is open, but her physical eyes are closed. So there's so much other symbolism in here. There's some crystals, there's acorns, the oak, this is an oak tree. An oak is an ancient tree that is bountiful. There's the pheasants, the quail. But the turtle is a representative of that ancient wisdom as well, and really of the subconscious, the ancient wisdom down deep in our subconscious. Karen says, great confirmation of what I'm in the process of in the nature as we speak. Yes. So right now, what's happening is Gaia is going through her transition. And many people are feeling it. This is something we don't really understand why. The Schumann resonance on the earth is going crazy. Like if you're tracking it all, it used to be a consistent 7.9 megahertz was the constant frequency of the planet for as far back as we were recording it. We knew how to record it. It was consistent. That was the frequency of planet Earth. Even Tesla says that Earth rings like a bell, and it's that consistent sound. It's the frequency of the quartz that's the predominant material of the planet. So right now, she is changing. Her frequency is fluctuating from a base of around 30 some odd megahertz, sometimes 32, sometimes 39, and at points and in different parts of the planet, it's spiking all the way up into the hundreds. So I've even seen some readings over the last 3 to 5 months where it's spiking up into 160 some odd megahertz, which is a huge difference. This is why so many people are having problems. That's why a lot of people are dying of health issues, why it seems like suddenly so many are escalating, health issues are escalating, because the frequency of the planet is different. So their vessels just are not in alignment with it, especially people who are not good at grounding or who don't want to be here or who are struggling. The way I view it is, our planet is in constant motion, constantly in motion. Not only is it orbiting around the sun, but remember, our whole solar system is in orbit around our galaxy. So it's more like a spiral, and it's moving. The Earth is constantly moving. Right now, it's like a bucking bronco. So you got to hold on, You've got to really ground in and hold on and allow that frequency up into you. If you've ever been to a rodeo, you see the difference between a rider who rides that bull or that bronco and with the intention of conquering it, right? And they hold on to the rein really tight, but they're not in allowance of it. So their butt is hard and they're like bouncing around and they get bucked off pretty quick. The horse figures out really fast that they're lifting and falling and then just bucks them right off. But for the rider that really sets down in and loosens the hips and allows themselves to be in flow with that bronco, and they're planting their seat down in, you have to envision your butt like down in. I was a horseback rider, so there's a difference in the way that you ride that way. When you ride in a relaxed, grounded into the horse state, it's impossible for that horse to buck you off. So that's kind of where we're at right now. we can't like lock into our position. Anything that we hold rigid is going to be brought to the surface, and it's going to be broken. It's going to be bucked off. And so right now is about coming into that graceful, really seeding down into the earth and into her frequency. We're not trying to change her. We're not trying to fix her. We're allowing her to come into us. We're allowing her to set the rhythm and the pace. We're riding the planet. And that's what the kind of grounding we need to do right now is. The thing about trees is they look like they're so sturdy and strong, but if you watch a tree in the wind, it's actually moving. It's bowing and flexing. It's when the tree starts to die and the limb loses the suppleness of it that the wind can break off the limbs. They get rigid. They can't move with the wind, and so they break. So that's what it is happening right now, is those rigid pieces are breaking. A lot of the people who are passing away, I love a lot of them. I mean, some of my favorite stars and idols are all passing right now. And yes, they are older, and yes, they have ridden a hard life, but they also were very rigid in their perspective of things, of what they were here to do. For instance, I absolutely love David Bowie. I will admit it. I am a Bowie fan. And at the same time, if you've ever heard his interviews, one of the things that he talks about is he hates performing. He hated to perform. He hated being in the spotlight. And that's part of why he would put on these personas to perform, so he could actually feel like he could go forward and do it. But what he loved to do was to write the music, to send that music out there. But he couldn't find anyone who was willing to perform it the way he wanted it to be performed. So he was rigid in the view of how it had to come across. There was no room or space for others to interpret or to bring in what they had to share as well. It had to be his way. So that's a pretty rigid perspective and viewpoint. Carrie Fisher's another one. I love her too. However, she had a very strong view. If you ever listen to her talking, she's extremely rigid in her view and her perspective. And she came through a lot of hardship. So when we go through these hard spaces of ourselves, especially situations that in some way make us feel like we're dying inside, if we don't allow those parts to break away, instead we try to hold on to them, then we ourselves break away. And that's definitely something that is in alignment with what I wanted to talk about today. So this week we've been focusing on how to fight. Right? We've been focusing on what it is to fight. Karen says, I feel the frequency adjustment on so many different levels. Grateful to have a way to understand these things and to allow the upgrades to flow. Yeah, it's really quite important to not resist these upgrades when they happen. For myself, I normally keep my calendar. My calendar is pretty busy usually. We can kind of see. Normally this is what it looks like. Lots of stuff scheduled for each day, different things going on, all of my little notes. For this week, it's like nothing. All of these things got canceled, moved, or they're just socializing. It's been a very slow week this week, and the second half of last week. I had to just shut it all down. I had to. The frequencies coming through have been extremely strong for me. They've been impacting me physiologically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and energetically. I have been looking at myself in a completely different light, allowing new feelings, new energies, new thoughts, new concepts to come through, and also allowing nothing to come through, right? Just like going into a state of nothingness in the mind. It was really hard to talk. I was able to show up for morning Oasis, and then after that it was like a shutdown. And the last 2 days I actually pretty much just spent the days in bed, or I even had somebody come over and they needed my help. I pretty much just kicked back in my chair and was listening. I wasn't offering much of anything because I couldn't. I couldn't. I didn't have it in me. So recognizing when when it's time to take that downtime and to not to not do and to allow and to receive is really important. And right now, I think that's what's going on as well. I intentionally just had to leave my schedule totally open, and not so things can come in of people to meet or things to do, but so that I can just stay in this state of just nothing. I can't deal with fights. I can't deal with arguments. I can't deal with any of that stuff. And when I did try to force something to happen, I ended up in a disagreement with somebody that I love and did not want to be in a disagreement with. So, it's definitely in the air. And what I wanted to talk about today was, we've been talking about, we started the week with when is it that we speak our truth, even though there has to be a disagreement about it. And that was on Memorial Day, really talking about, how we come into conflict, remembering the beauty of conflict, all of those things. And then we transitioned into, how do we fight fair? Like, okay, so we're gonna fight. So how do we fight fair? Shauna says downtime has been so very important to her too. Yeah, she's been transitioning a lot. And then yesterday we talked about, how do we come back together after a fight? So I thought today would be a great rounding out to talk about, when do we say enough is enough? I'm all done fighting. I'm all done with this relationship. I'm ready to move on. So that's a tricky one. That's a really, really tricky one. And the reason that it's tricky is because we can't, one, if we don't learn our lessons, they just keep coming. If we don't learn the lessons with one person and we reject that person and we believe that they're the problem instead of the lesson is coming to us through them, then the lesson just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. But two, there are times where we will hold on after the lessons have been learned. So I'm going to kind of break it up and talk about those in two separate parts. The first part is resisting the lesson. If you find yourself in a pattern of having the same kind of relationships, so for instance, for myself, my partnership, as far as my spouse, my husband, and any boyfriends, or I'm bisexual, so any girlfriends that I had in the past, they were all pretty different from one another. They each had a different, chunk, this is what this is about, chunk, this is what this is about, chunk, that's what that's about. And I usually stayed in a relationship long past others, when others were like, you need to get out of that. I would stay. And so I would, until there was nothing left, there was no engagement left, and that's when I would leave. So in my intimate relationships, that lessons I was really embracing. Where I wasn't embracing my lessons was with my friendships. And I'll come back to the intimate relationships in a minute, because that's going to be the second part. But in my friendships, I was drawing in these women friends that were what I thought of as beautiful, strong, powerful, accomplished. I was making these women my close friends, and I would allow them to treat me really poorly. I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my God, how did I let those women treat me like that? And I would often have, I had one friend when I was in high school, for instance, tell me, I love having ugly friends. They make me feel so beautiful. She said it to me. And I was just like, oh, so you think I'm ugly? Like, really? There were many things that she would say that was along those lines. I had another person tell me in my 20s, a friend of mine, say, Jessie, I have people lined up out the door to be my friend, but I chose you. So you should be grateful that I'm giving you my time of day. Right? I had so many different instances like that with different friends. And that was my repeating pattern. I kept making friends with these women that treated me like crap. And they were narcissistic, they were self-absorbed, they were controlling, they were domineering, they were willing to fight dirty, they were willing to be mean, they were willing to speak totally inappropriate things to me. So that was my pattern. I kept picking those and making them my best friends, right? And I was resisting the lesson. I was in therapy at the time when I was really trying to understand this lesson. And all through therapy, it was like I spent as much time talking about my friends as I did my husband. So, I was really struggling with it. And I would end up ending the relationships by writing these really long letters. And in the letters, they would talk all about, how I got better and better at writing these letters, but they would talk about, how hurt I was, how much I loved them, how this is what I felt like I was doing wrong, but this is what I felt like they were doing wrong, and I don't want to be treated that way anymore. And I used to send those letters to my mom, and I would be like, Mom, do you think this sounds okay? Like, I'm trying not to be too blamey and bitchy. And my mom always wanted to be more my friend than my mother. She was, from as early as I can remember, she was less like a mother and more like a friend. And so she would tell me, well, it sounds like you're both really hurt. It sounds like you're really hurt right now, and blah, blah, blah. And I would continue on this dynamic over and over and over. And then it came time for me to write that letter to my mom, which I was just talking about, I think, yesterday. And when I wrote that letter to my mom, one of her responses actually was, this sounds an awful lot like the letters that you're writing to all those women. And that was the boom. Oh, I've been using all of these other women as a way of understanding my mother. And all of those women hate my mother. They're all like, your mother is awful. Your mother is the worst. And they all kind of reminded me of my mother. And so then I was like, wait a minute. Is this the lesson? Is this the lesson that I've been resisting, that I haven't wanted to learn? That I can kick those other women out of my life, but I couldn't kick out my mom? I couldn't say, hey, lady, you're not treating me the way I want to be treated. You're not treating me with respect, with love, with tenderness, with compassion, right? And so that was the aha moment. The moment that I stopped attracting those kind of women as friends. I don't have any women in my life as a friend that treats me that way now. In fact, the two who are still in my life, and they're very peripherally in my life, by the way. They do not take an active role, and I would not call them my best friends, although they might still call me that. They are all the way on the outskirts as far as my life goes. They do not, it's like now they know they can't get away with it. They cannot treat me that way. One of them even apologized and was like, you know what, I've been kind of shitty to you, actually, I realized. So it was after I learned that lesson and was like, this is my pattern, and I've been repeating it, and I've been allowing things, I've been stuffing what I feel until it blows up and I can't deal with it anymore. With each of these people, and really it was my mom, it was my relationship with my mother. And that was the lesson, that even if this person is the most important person, the person that you came out of, the person that made you, even if it's that person in your life, you have the right to say, no, I'm all done. Don't talk to me like that. Don't put me in these fucking situations anymore. I'm all done with playing these things out with you. And really understanding that I have the right and the responsibility towards my family, my son, myself, to not expose myself and re-engage with somebody who has no interest in changing whatsoever, but expects you to change to be with them. So that was my lesson. Once I learned it and did it with my mother, everything else changed. So now the women who come into my life, they view me as they're grateful that I'm taking the time to spend with them. And I'm grateful that they're taking the time to spend with me. And nobody has to say it other than to say, I'm so grateful for your time and your love and your affection and your energy. Not, I expect you to be grateful to me for what I'm doing, right? See the difference, the transition? So when we're resisting a lesson and we keep finding ourselves in the same pattern of fighting with somebody, the same pattern over and over and over, that's a resisted lesson. And it's time to stop expecting somebody else to do different, somebody else to make it different, some other change to occur. It's never going to happen until you get the lesson. You're going to keep drawing that same person back and back and back and back in just different skins, different meat suits, as many people refer to these vessels as being, because you haven't learned yet that you are of value, or whatever your lesson may be. So that was, that's the first one. Like that's where you don't say, I'm walking away and I'm done, because you haven't learned it yet. You can, but it's just going to come back. It's going to keep coming back. The other part of it, hi Sue, the other part of it, so that's the first type, right? When do I say enough is enough? When I've learned, when I'm all done, and really learned the lesson. Then the second type of lessons that we want to, when we say enough is enough with the fighting, is when we are, when there's nothing else to be learned. There's just no engagement anymore. There's nothing that pulls in. It's like you just stay on this outside of state of neutrality. Neutrality is very different than balance, right? Being balanced, there's still an engagement. There's this connection that's pulling and giving and pulling and giving. But when you find that all there is fighting, all there is disagreement, all there is conflict, and there is no coming together time, there's no linking back in together, then you're just holding on to this relationship because of a pattern, because of a habit, and that too is something to be learned, because it's an expectation. What is going on there that's making you feel that link in, that's making you feel like you have to continue to re-engage? So for me, I personally, in those instances, as well as the others, have come into this place where now I wait and I allow the other to actually make that choice, or allow the natural progression to pull it apart. And that to me feels like the most healthy way to balance out, when is it enough? When is there enough in the engagement? When you naturally drift away, and it's graceful and it's comfortable, and it's like, it's kind of like, the comets. Comets are constantly in an orbit, right? They go around and they loop around. Now, if they get sucked in by some moving object, then they're going to shift and go into an orbit there. So we have to allow ourselves, we're in orbit until there's something else that pulls us, and then we engage in that orbit. And that to me feels so much more comfortable. That feels like I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm evolving and I'm not staying stagnant. When you're trying to force it, when you're trying to force the emotion, force the engagement, force it, that's when you're not, that's the next lesson is, okay, allow this relationship to evolve. With my one of my best friends of 25 years, we had this big blow up conflict, and that was what was necessary to give the propulsion of, okay, time to go into two separate spheres. And so it was really just a graceful transition. We had our blow up fight. We talked about what was going on between us. And then it was like, I feel disengaged. That disengagement, allow the disengagement to happen. Don't try to pull that comet or that star closer, because it's a natural disengagement. And that's when we allow the disengagement to occur and find ourselves in a new orbit, in a new cycle. And, it's, to me, that's how I tell. I feel a natural disengagement and it moves away. So, really, it doesn't become about like enough is enough. It becomes about, oh man, I got nothing left. I got nothing to say. I'm all done. I feel done. And that's the place that I go to before I decide to really release from a relationship. The other part that I've learned over the years is I actually don't end relationships with like a knife cut. I don't anymore. I allow the orbit to pass. Halley's Comet is on a 75-year cycle. Every 75 years it comes back. What I have found is that of all of my friendships and relationships and partnerships, they're all on cycles. Give it long enough and it circles back around to check in with you. How you doing? Do you need any more lessons from me? Do you need any more engagement? I need a little more. And then whoop, then it goes out again. So I don't really want to have to do this with new people. If I do it with new people, then I've got to learn all of their crap, right? And I've got to relearn new things. If I need to remember, oh, I actually am allowed to speak up and stand up for myself, I'm quite happy with it being one of those old friends circling back in and going, and me going, oh, wait, no. I'm all done with that. I'm not going to be treated that way anymore. Yeah, and they move back out. You see, the difference is how many different people do you need to pull into your system? It kind of what just popped into my mind is like in space. In space around our planet right now, we have this field, this band of space garbage that's floating around. So we have to, now when we launch things, we have to launch them and send them out even further and even further in order to be able to orbit safely without being in the path of the space garbage. How sad is that, right? But anyway, that's kind of what happens if we keep everything with us and we keep not learning from that and drawing new and more and more. Our lives suddenly get so cluttered with these people that are lessons that we're not letting go of, that it's hard to see the actual new person coming in that is the lesson that we're ready for now, our next step, our next evolution, our next growth cycle. So that was what I wanted to talk about for when do we say enough is enough. And I thought, why don't we do just a kind of a clearing out and a exercise. Does that sound good to everybody? We'll just kind of look and give you some time to see, am I covered with debris? Do I have the wreckage all around me because I'm afraid of letting it go? Because I'm trying to be too gravitationally pulling of all this stuff? Or is it time to just let things go naturally? I'm going to take a sip of my coffee while you guys get comfortable. We've got about 15 minutes left to do this. I think that's plenty of time. Let's practice that exercise we did yesterday for a quick grounding and connection. But I want to shift it just a little bit. Okay. So go ahead and just take a moment, breathing and coming into the body. You guys are so fast at this. It's awesome. All right. Now, yesterday what we did was visualize a tree in front of us. Today, I want you to visualize the planet. See the whole planet, that little blue sphere with the Africa elephant-looking, or no, that's the horse. Africa's more like that horse head, and South America like that elephant head, North America, and Asia and Europe. Just see the whole planet, just for this moment, as though it's right in front of you, this planet. And now I want you to step inside of the planet, all the way into the heart, into that core, and feel the heat of that planet radiating out, the field of the planet radiating out. She's just another representation. She's not a meat suit, she's a rock suit. We're just going to shift into our planetary consciousness, that understanding of the whole of her beings that live upon her surface. Just like we don't have to think about the individual microorganisms that live on our skin or in our body, colonized within, they just are a part of the system. So we're just going to step into that planetary consciousness space. Good. Feel her movement as she's orbiting around the sun. Just allow that orbit to shift and to move you. She's a little bit tilted, so as she moves during her cycle, different parts get more exposure and less. Just allow that as though you're orbiting around your own sun. See her take note of the moon orbiting around her satellite. Just orbiting gracefully, and the moon is also in an elliptical orbit. It comes closer and further as it comes around. The moon is also ever so slightly moving further away from us, ever so slightly, in a very graceful and extremely gradual progression away. Just take note of it. Now let's begin to bring our focus into the debris that's floating around the planet. These are all things that her people created in order to help her see each other, see themselves, be interconnected, know outside of themselves, know internally. Just see all the debris. And these are the people that are in your life that have helped you know yourself, see outside of yourself. That's all those people. We're going to allow that debris to just represent it. All those people. And yesterday we used this golden sieve, a great golden filter. And we ran it through the body. Now I want you to imagine that Gaia is holding out a great big golden skimmer, like sieve. And as she's rotating, she's skimming and collecting the debris, all the debris that she is all done with, everything that she's learned and understood and processed, everything that she's completed that really needs to just disengage and float away, or needs to burn up in the atmosphere and become nothing anymore. We're just going to skim all of that stuff, and we're going to allow our filter to be of a shape and size that those people that are here as natural satellites orbiting us, supporting the planet, still in use, still in operation, still functioning, still part of our mirroring, all of that, those can stay. They're going to slip through the filter. But everything that we've completed, we're going to just start skimming and cleansing and gathering. And it's like that big filter is a butterfly net, collecting as it goes. Just collecting. And we're going to use this apophyllite stone to help us clearly see clearly what is. See that great eye on the bottom of the apophyllite? Using that energy and frequency to help us see more clearly what is necessary, what is still of use, what is still functioning, what are we still needing, and what do we not. Really allow yourself to clearly see. Skimming and collecting. Notice that some of these pieces have these tethers, these lines, these pulls, these connections, and they feel fear when we're trying to release them. Let's just take these great big imaginary cosmic snippers. Just snip those lines effortlessly and gracefully. If they're still to be learned from, then they will stay in orbit naturally. But they're not going to be tethered to us. We don't need the tethers anymore. We aren't resisting. We're allowing. Just allow those tethers to be snipped and see if they can stay, if they pass through the filter, or if they're collected and it's time to let them go. Just continue that skimming. And as you're doing so, think of the different people that play roles in your life, that play returning characters, returning roles, repeating patterns. Maybe it's a collection of people that all carry the same frequency. Just allow and just begin to observe, because in this time and space, you can also learn from them. What's left in the lessons? Notice how so much of that debris that's really close in is already starting to clear out, and it's making room for these more outside relationships to come in and take a closer space, because these are our new lessons. This is where we're ready now to see and understand. We're making room in our life for them as well. Now we're going to use the energy of this amazing cedar sap that I use for clearing and cleansing. I'm going to use this cedar frequency to cleanse and clear and take that net that we've collected up, all of this debris, up into source. Take it up into source so these things, these relationships, these connections can go up into source and be recycled, reused, and turned back into source consciousness, that infinite frequency energy. Just release. It's as though we're taking it into the sun. That net, taking it into the sun, and the sun gets to burn even more brightly. Even more light shining down on us. Good. Beautiful. Go ahead and continue your skimming and taking it into source as you learn and grow for as long as you choose. Thanks for showing up today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow's Q&A Friday. So if you have any questions, anything you want to understand better about the nature of fighting, the nature of disagreement and conflict, or anything else, PM me. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.